let's begin. My name is Katie Jackson. I'm the Director of Curriculum here at Top School Writing. Lisa Cullum, our CEO and author, is traveling to schools today, so I'm going to be holding our 20-minute meeting today. So it's our February monthly meeting. We are really going to be focusing on those not end of the year, but last minute strategies that you really want to be focusing on with your students in order to prepare them for that state assessment. So most states are assessing in April and some in May. So we have between about 20 to 40 school days until you actually test. So keeping in mind that you should be kind of finishing out those whole group lessons, the whole group instruction, and really getting into test prep. You also really want to be focusing on those skills that students need extra practice with and review. Narrative elaboration, own thoughts and ideas. You guys know that those ones are really difficult for students. With narrative elaboration, we want those cutesy little stories that go hand in hand with evidence from the text. We also want for own thoughts and ideas to not be fluff sentences. So if they're writing an expository essay about alligators, we do not want own thoughts and ideas to be alligators are cool, alligators are awesome, I love alligators. Those are all non-examples. We really want to make sure that students are teaching the reader about the topic that they're talking about in answering to the prompt. So those are some of the things that you really want to be focusing on and tweaking at this point in the year. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about pacing, where we should be in March. Sample writing block, thinking about your writing block, how much time you have during writing time, and be realistic with it. Sometimes when I talk and train teachers at this point in the year, they've given themselves more writing time in order to get through some of those skills and lessons that they need to get through. And then they go back to reading after the writing test. So kind of think about some of those skills and those lessons that you need to get to before your test so that your students are exposed to those skills. And sometimes we have to beg, borrow, and steal in other places in order to get that time in. Our assessment practice, our strategies for below level readers and writers, and then lastly, any questions. So this is our agenda for today. So if you do not have these, I can definitely send them to you. You can always just put it in the question and answer your email address if you do not have these. These are our bootcamp pacing guides. So what we have done is we have taken our 100+ lessons and we chose 40 of the most important ones. So what we have done is given you an accelerated pacing guide so that you can use it and follow it and have your kids prepared by state assessment time. Now, if you have 20 days or less at this point, you're going to have to go through those skills, cross off anything that your students already understand or have mastered, and then look at those lessons that your kids have not been exposed to or not been taught, and really focus and hone in on those right before the test. So if you are in a tested grade level, most likely you have a boot camp pacing guide or accelerated pacing guide that has 1, 2, and 3. Some have the option A and option B, where you choose narrative or advanced text-based writing. Now, if you are in a state that has narrative on your state assessment, you are obviously going to be choosing option A. So if you are testing in the first week of April, you should already be in option A at this point as far as your accelerated pacing guide in order to get through those lessons and to have some test prep time. Also keep in mind, most spring breaks are in the month of March. So it's usually right before that test. So that takes a week away of your instruction. So start thinking about, okay, if I have an option A or an option A and B, and I need to get through narrative writing, how many days do I need to get through 10 lessons? Some teachers may tell me I'm going to do them in 5 days and I'm going to do 2 a day. I'm going to beg, borrow, and steal for my reading time, and I'm going to get through those lessons last minute. Whatever you do, just make sure that if you have narrative and that's a tested genre, that you get to narrative and you start that ASAP, especially if your test is in April. So right now, if you are just going into and you do not have an option A or B, and you are finishing up text-based argumentative writing and you're getting into additional activities and strategies within the next week or so, you are good to go. So just keep in mind that you are at a steady pace. I always tell teachers to work backwards in their calendars so that you're able to get through all of those skills and those lessons. And then you'll see how many days you have in order to maybe tweak your calendar to put in 2 lessons a day. So just be thinking about how many days you have until test time, as well as spring break, and then test prep time. If you want to take a week to do some sort of test prep or a mock assessment, make sure that you're working backwards in your calendar. Keep in mind also that you need to make sure that you are copying these text sets in order to do these lessons that are in your accelerated pacing guides. So the text sets, I've been having a lot of teachers that are telling me, well, it's a lot of copying. You got to make sure that the copies are made prior to teaching the lesson. So make sure that your copies are made. You kind of look at those copies. Some of you may already have these copies made and they're in a folder somewhere, so your kids just have to take them out. But kind of make sure and organize yourself so that you know which text sets need to be copied prior to teaching those lessons. Great. Sample writing block. So 10 to 20 minutes of whole group instruction. I have been telling teachers, please make sure you're doing whole group instruction. I know small group is very important, but if you are doing 6 small groups or 5 small groups and you're doing the exact same thing, like teaching introduction paragraph or teaching conclusion paragraph 5 or 6 times because you have 5 or 6 small groups, it's not really beneficial to your kids or you. Now, remember, we want to make sure that our small groups are for remediation and review. So we're not teaching introduction paragraph 6 times, and then by the time we get back to group 1, our kids have forgotten what we did with them a week ago. So make sure you're doing whole group instruction in order to, I guess, be efficient with your time. Reteach a skill most need to review. So if your kids are struggling and you have 20 kids and 17 of them are struggling with own thoughts and ideas, then whole group instruction, do as much as you can to review that as a whole group or as a class. Provide modeled and guided whole group practice. I always tell teachers, underneath the document camera, have your students watch you do it first and then they do it. So I would always tell a teacher to have their own text set and passages and prompt. The students watch you do, let's say, your introduction paragraph. You are literally talking out loud. You're making mistakes on purpose. You're going back and erasing. And then you show them all those strategies that you did to create that introduction paragraph. And then they do it with their own text set and their own prompt. So 10 to 20 minutes of whole group instruction. If you need more, sometimes you may need more. That's okay. But this is kind of a balance of whole group and small group. So small group is 20 to 40 minutes of individualized instruction and practice. So teacher-led skill groups, individualized assignments, revision. Progress monitoring tools. Please make sure you're using your assessment resources or your progress monitoring tools in order to make sure that your students understand. If they understand, give them a check mark. It's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet where you can say, okay, they have it or they don't. But make sure that you're looking at if your kids understand it, if your kids don't understand it, because then you can pull groups and give immediate feedback. Have a rhyme or reason for whatever you're doing. Please do not just pull random kids. Make sure that those are kids that need the review and that you're reviewing a skill that they actually need. So small group instruction, if you can do it, but whole group is super important because that's the way that you're going to get through all of these lessons in a quick way to give your students some sort of exposure. All right. Assessment practice, schedule for once a week in March. Okay, so you know your kids. If you think that it would be beneficial to your students to do a practice test once a week, every week in March until the test time, please do so. If you feel though, and I was in 4th grade for many, many years, I taught for 15 years, but most of my time was in 4th grade. I knew my 4th graders. If I did a practice test every single week in the month of March. By the time the real deal, the real test came, my kids could care less about that test. So I don't want you to over assess and do too many assessments where they don't care about the real one. So kind of keep in mind, you guys know your kids. You definitely want to do some sort of practice test though. You want to practice test and do the mock assessment just like you would do on the day of the real test. So when kids are leaving to go to other classrooms, if teachers are coming to pick them up, you want to make sure that there are no surprises for your kids and that they understand what's happening on the day of the test and that they just practice it and that they know what's going to happen on that day. So if you feel like assessment practice is beneficial to your kids and you want them to do at least one practice test a week, please feel free to do so. You can use the pre-test, the post-test. You can use all of those practice tests that are within our curriculum. I would choose a prompt, give them the passages, and then give them the same amount of time that your state gives in order to make sure that they're, you're creating stamina and that they understand those time limits. So students should write a 2-hour timed essay once per week. Like I said, time them based upon your state. Beg, borrow, and steal time from other places at this point in the year. I know that there's not enough time to do it all, so you have to make sure with this writing assessment, your kids understand. You may have to take some time out of your reading time in order to get through writing, and then give that extra time in reading after the writing assessment. So beg, borrow, and steal time, you got to make sure that you get it in. Provide accommodations just like you would on the day of the test. Be in it with them, circulate, take notes, hold mini conferences. While students are doing assessments or doing some sort of practice for you, you need to be making sure that you're checking notebooks, conferencing with kids. When I say conferencing, I'm saying 1 to 2 minutes, just kind of going over what students need to tweak to better their writing. Stop scoring at home. Use informal assessment checklists while students are writing. These are your progress monitoring tools. So keep that in mind that you want to make sure that you go ahead and grab those progress monitoring tools. Some people make their own. You can use ours. But really, it's just a check if that student understands that skill or an X if they don't, so that you have some sort of data in order to pull students for small group instruction and so that you understand which kids understand the skill and which kids do not. Make it fun. At this point of the year, we're pulling teeth. So make it fun. There is a mini PD if you have a digital license. It is under additional resources. So if you go to additional resources in your digital license, you will find that there is a fun and engaging mini PD. It's fun and engaging activities for writing. So we give you tons of different ideas to practice these skills within our curriculum in a fun way. So check that out if you're looking for something fun to do. Even just changing the environment is a huge, big deal. I would take my kids to the cafeteria. We live in Florida, so we would go outside and bring blankets and we would write outside. Even giving them a partner to write, even giving them big anchor chart papers to write their essays on, and then they, share it with the class. Make it fun, make it engaging, make it something different so that it's exciting. Also, contests are huge at this time of the year. Hold a contest for everything that you do. If you're working on conclusion paragraph, say right in the beginning, all right, guys, we're working on conclusion paragraph. I'm picking the 2 best conclusion paragraphs today. You're getting $100 to our school money or whatever you're doing. Maybe it's 2 raffle tickets, or maybe it's just candy, something easy, but kids will work for those incentives, and the contest creates that competition, which makes it fun. So make writing fun because we got to keep them engaged and excited until that test comes around. Utilize your state practice tests. In Florida and most states, you're going to go to your Department of Education, your DOE website, and you can put in the practice tests and find a writing practice test. Keep in mind that most platforms have the digital passages on the left-hand side of the screen, and students type their essay on the right-hand side. So this is kind of what it kind of gives students just a way to see what the actual testing platform will look like. With digital, remember, they're not going to have paper passages. So you need to keep practicing this so that students understand that they're going to be reading their passages digitally and they're going to have to use their scratch paper in order to take notes to make sure they understand where to find their evidence from the text, because they're not able to underline, stop and jot, all of those things because they don't have paper passages. So start practicing that now. To help you with that, and a lot of people don't realize that we have this, but our tswtest.com is our typing platform that we created. It just came out right before Christmas. You can do practice and mock tests on here so that students can understand and kind of get a feel for what the digital platform looks like for their real test. It is just a website, so anybody that wants to use it can use it. You don't have to have top score writing to use it, but it allows students to upload their passages on the left-hand side of the screen, just like the actual testing platform. The way that students are going to get their passages is through the teacher. So the teacher has to send their passages digitally, either through email or Google Classroom. Once the student has access to those passages, they download them to their laptop or their Chromebook, and then they're able to upload them to the left-hand side of this website. Then they're able to write their essay on the right-hand side, and then they download their essay to their computer and are able to send it back to their teacher through either email or Google Classroom. So please take down this website, tswtest.com. It's super helpful. I would start practicing tomorrow with this because your kids need this practice with the typing aspect as well as reading the passages digitally. Time management. Know the time limit for your state's assessment. Create anchor charts that divide the writing process into clear steps and assign an appropriate amount of time to each. If you do not have these on anchor charts in your room right now, I highly suggest making them. We've broken down this process. Yes, this is for 120 minutes. I would break it down based upon what your timing is in your state. But even if you are not timed in your state, I would use this process just to create stamina, because you know kids, they'll sit there and take a half hour for an introduction paragraph if you don't give them a time limit. So when we talk about time limit, we say reading the passages 20 to 30 minutes, planning 5 to 10 minutes, writing the actual essay 45 to 55 minutes, and then editing is any extra time. We then went a step further for the writing process when they're actually writing their essay, those 45 to 55 minutes. And we're saying that the introduction paragraph, the first paragraph, is 5 to 10. Their 3 body paragraphs, so second, third, and fourth, are 10 to 15 minutes. And then their 5th paragraph, their conclusion, is 5 to 10. So this kind of creates stamina. I used to get a kitchen timer, one of those old ones that when it gets to the end, it gets faster and you can hear it, because kids start to hear that and they start to write faster. It creates competition. It creates fun in the classroom. And they actually, you'll hear a pin drop. It will keep them super quiet because now they know that they're trying to race that timer. So make sure that you are focusing on time, especially if you are in a state that times your students. Identify each student's strengths and weaknesses. These are the progress monitoring tools that I was talking about in your assessment resources. So they're pretty much like Excel spreadsheets where you have your students' names down the side. And this is an example of a 4th grade informal assessment checklist. So let's say that you are giving a expository prompt and your students are going to do a practice test with, it's an expository practice test. For 4th grade, these are all of the skills that you just taught in expository, which is section 2. So you just taught all of these skills. Now you're giving a practice test and you are going to spend, I would give your kids 2 hours, and I would walk my classroom about 20 times because there's about 20 things that you're looking for each of these kids. So the first one is your introduction. Do they have a hook, their 3-topic sentence, and a closing statement? If they do, you give them a check mark. If they don't, you give them an X. So when I would use this in my own classroom and I'd be walking around checking for their introductions, I'd be looking over their shoulders. It would take me about 8 minutes to go through and see if they have those 3 components there in their introduction paragraph. If they had it, I gave them a check. If they didn't, I gave them an X. Then the second round around my classroom, I was literally looking for a transition word for T1 and a topic sentence. It took me less than 5 minutes to do this. So I would go again through my class, through the rows, and I would be looking over each kid's shoulder and saying, oh, they have a T1 transition and a topic sentence. If they had it, I gave them a check mark. If they didn't have it, I gave them an X. Then the third round around my classroom, I was looking at their body paragraph, that T1, 3 to 4 sentences for A and 3 to 4 sentences for B. So I'd go through. This would take me longer, obviously, because these are those big body paragraphs. I would be looking over their shoulder. If they had it, I gave them a check mark. If they didn't, I gave them an X. So by the end of the 120 minutes that my kids were timed, I pretty much knew where each kid stood with each of these skills. So my entire checklist was pretty much filled up by the end of the assignment. So I pretty much just scored their papers while they were actually writing. So at the end, I could easily eyeball a score based upon my X's and my checks. So let's say Johnny's my first kid at the top here, and he had 7 X's out of these 20 things. In the state of Florida, a perfect score is 12. So I probably would give him an 8 or 9 out of 12. I also knew the things that I was going to work on and tweak with Johnny in the next couple of weeks before that state assessment. So this kind of gave me a clear understanding of where each kid was without having to take home all of these essays to score. So check out these progress monitoring tools. They are super easy to use and helpful, especially with scoring. It takes a long time to score essays. I know that we have some questions. I'm going to be answering those at the end, so bear with me here. We're going to finish this and then we'll get to the questions. Conferencing. So it's important to conference often in small periods of time in order to tweak students' work. When I say conference, I'm saying 1 minute. For instance, hey, Johnny, I saw that you did an introduction paragraph. You're missing something here. Look at our anchor chart. What are you missing? Oh yeah, you're missing your 3-topic sentence, right? So let's go back and I want you to revise that 3-topic sentence. Make sure you use your 3 topics from your plan and then come back to me when you're done. That's literally a conference. So you do that a lot and you do it more often and you tweak students' writing that way. So conferencing should only be 30 seconds to 2 minutes at most. Only conference on one skill at a time so students don't become overwhelmed. And during the conference, review the skill with the student. Then send the student back to their desk to revise, and then have them come back to you when they are finished to review their revision. So you can do a lot of that in a short period of time where you're just calling kids, you notice something that you need to tweak, you show them how to tweak it, they go revise it, and they bring it back to you. If you have a digital license, please check out our additional resources where we have our mini PDs. Like I told you, there is a mini PD on meeting the needs of below level writers. There's a lot there. There's also that one on there on fun and engaging activities to do in writing. Please check those out. They're super helpful, especially if you have a PLC or a PD coming up. Keep that in mind. For below level readers and writers, the first step. So if you have students here, number 1, I would always tell you, if you know these kids that are below grade level that you know are not going to be giving you a 5-paragraph essay on the day of the test, you start to have those conversations with them right now. I would not blab it to your entire class, but I would start to say, okay, I know that this kid is not going to write a 5-paragraph essay for me. However, do I think that they can do a 3-paragraph essay? Probably. So maybe you just talk to them and say, we're going to focus on an introduction paragraph, 1 big body paragraph that has evidence from the text and their own thoughts and ideas, and then a conclusion paragraph. So you're not going to tell your whole class this because you don't want them saying, oh man, how come they get 3 paragraphs and I have to do 5 paragraphs, and it's going to cause chaos, right? But if you have personal conversations with some of these kids that you know, some of these babies that you know aren't going to write on the day of, if you make it less overwhelming for them, they may be more willing to write for you. So start to think about those conversations and those students that you may want to have those conversations with. For below level readers and writers, step 1, read the text, identify the writing task, read the prompt 3 times, make sure that they understand what the prompt is asking them to write about, kind of train them with this strategy. Also, have them ask themselves, is this a specific prompt that it's asking me about, or is this a general prompt? For instance, is it just asking me to write an expository essay about alligators, or is it asking me to write an expository essay about alligator habitats? So we got to make sure that our students are answering to the prompt, okay? Have students be a detective. Get an idea of what the articles are about by doing the following. Read titles and subtitles. Read headings and subheadings. Pay close attention to all pictures, graphics, and text features. Skim the articles. What do the bolded words mean? What words are used over and over? What words do you recognize? So make this fun. Tell the students they are detectives and need to get all the clues they can about the passages are about. So have them look at those headings. A lot of kids can look at the headings and kind of know what that paragraph is about and kind of come up with their own thoughts and ideas about what that paragraph is about. So keep that in mind when they become detectives and they're searching for that information and that evidence in the text. Step 2, prepare to write. If necessary, allow students to complete a basic ITC or IRC outline without A and B subtopics, individualize expectations. Just decide on 3 big topics or reasons. These often can be titles or headings from the passages. So yes, we want them to have A's and B's if they can, but if they don't, you can just give them their I, reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, and their C. A lot of times, students that are below level readers, they can kind of just pick the headings as their reason 1 or topic 1, reason 2 or their topic 2, or reason 3 is their topic 3. So either way works, but you want to make sure that you are minimalizing everything for these students. Step 3 is write the essay. Focus on structure. Make sure to include the following: 5 clearly indented paragraphs. Like I said, if you have to make it 3, where you have just an intro and a conclusion in 1 body paragraph, then do so. Introduction, 2 to 3 sentences long. Each middle paragraph should start with a transition and a complete topic sentence. For your support, for each middle paragraph, write what you already know about the topic plus what you can understand from being a detective. Try to write 3 to 6 sentences. Put 1 quote in each middle paragraph, put 1 citation in each middle paragraph. So if they're just going to do 1 body paragraph, they're going to do 1 body paragraph with 3 to 6 sentences in it. They're going to have a transition word, and they are going to state that topic that they're going to talk about, and they're going to provide evidence from the text with their own thoughts and ideas. So if you choose to do 3 body paragraphs with these students, so be it. But if you have to break it down into smaller and just do 1 or 2 body paragraphs, that's perfectly fine as well. Conclusion has to be 2 to 3 sentences long as well. So make sure rubrics specifically state that you have to have a satisfying, effective introduction and conclusion. So they have to make sure that they have that intro and that conclusion on their paper. Tips: invest time in writing. Students will not master essay writing in 10 minutes a day. Structure, organization, and essay length are key. Quantity is as important as quality. So most students score higher when they have more details. Be very clear about expectations. Focus on crucial skills. Do not overwhelm or confuse students with advanced skills. Keep it simple, especially for students that are below grade level. Give students a personalized checklist or expectations to use as they write. Practice and repetition lead to mastery. Color coding makes everything explicit. Daily self-assessment leads to fewer repeated mistakes, and completed examples for students to refer to are powerful. I always give my students non-examples to look at. Most of the time when they see a non-example, light bulbs go off. I can sit there and tell them what to do until I'm blue in the face, but the minute I give them something on what they're not supposed to do, it makes sense to them. So give them non-examples. Also, make sure that you print out your sample papers from your state. Show those sample papers and what a 6 looks like or what a perfect 12 looks like. You want your kids to see what a perfect paper looks like or what a paper that is not so good looks like. So start having those conversations and showing them those papers. Like I said, set individualized evolving goals. You can do that with certain checklists for each of your kids. And just keep writing fun. At this time of the year, I remember as a teacher, I struggled in February because it's just a lot of testing, and that's all we're talking about. So try to make writing fun as much as possible to keep your students engaged. All right, so questions. It says, what grade level does top score begin? We start in first grade. We have curriculum in first grade. However, it's very simplified and a little bit different from our second through 12th grade curriculum. If you need more, you can always email me at Katie, Katie, at topscorewriting.com, and I can give you whatever you're looking for. All right then, guys. Well, thank you so much. Miranda, yes, it is adaptable to kindergarten. Good luck to everybody as you get closer to your test. Please feel free to contact me at Katie at topscorewriting.com. Here's my email, Katie at topscorewriting.com, and have a great rest of your day.